Hello, my name is Hanno. I'm a professor in accounting at the Norwegian School of Management, and in this clip we would like to discuss individual case preparation together with my colleague.
Hi, my name is Espen Andersen. I'm an associate professor of technology strategy at the Norwegian School of Management. Now, when you're preparing for a case, there are sort of two stages to preparation. One is the individual preparation that you do yourself, and then there is group preparation, where you talk with other students within a study group or within a group that's going to present the case in a classroom, because you can have a case discussion as individuals, as you individual students in a classroom, or as a group where a group presents. But the preparation is kind of similar in both of them. You have to prepare first as an individual and then as a group. And even if it's an individual class, it's very important to have that group discussion so that you get to hone your analysis against some other people before you present it to the whole class. Starting on individual preparation, first let's underscore that case preparation is not something you do in the morning before class or something you do the night before class. A proper case preparation for an individual student takes from 3 to 4, maybe more hours if your English is weak, for instance. And that includes at least a 45-minute discussion with some other students in preparation. Now, the way you do this is it's not just reading the case. You have to read it in a structured way. And how you do that is individual. People do it differently. But I would suggest that a good way is to read the case 3 to 4 times. First, you read through the case fast. That is to get an overview and a sort of understanding, a feel for the thing. Read through very fast, perhaps use a highlighter or something and underline things that strike you as important right away. Take a look at the exhibits and familiarize yourself with them. They're there for a reason, and sort of go through the whole thing very fast. Secondly, when you do the second reading, that is a structured reading. This is when you break out the notepad beside the case or use a computer and take very careful notes as you go through. And in your mind, you should have the study questions that very often come with the case, because those study questions aren't sort of questions you're supposed to have an answer to and then you solve the case, but they're there to pose questions that when you answer them, that helps you in preparation and in understanding. And here it is very important to be structured, not just to do an overview of the case, an outline, but to use tables or graphics or some sort of memory aiding device. For instance, many cases involve companies over time, and then it's useful to prepare a timeline so that this happened then this happened, and take note of what happened externally in the to the company, in the business environment. Maybe something changed. What was the company's reaction to that? How did the economic circumstances change? How do the technological circumstances change? Perhaps some new technology has been introduced. Perhaps some competitor has done something new. How does the company react to that? How should they react, and so on? And sort of make a very careful, structured reading through the whole thing. And then the third reading, which is when you read with a view for presentation, either as an individual, as a group. You say, okay, I have come to an understanding. I may have some answers to what the underlying problems are here. How should I present them? How should I lay out the line of argument that Hanno referred to in our first video? Then there are articles as well, right?
Right, right. I would like to stress actually that the articles, they tend to be related to the case. So the case itself is not a single standing issue. The articles lead up and give you more arguments to build your case answer, or better said, to support your line of argument. The other thing that supports your line of argument is the quantitative exhibits, because quite some cases in quantitative courses like accounting or finance, operations, they require some number crunching. And that's not just an exercise for the sake of the exercise. What it's there for is to give you an argument that goes into a bigger picture. You calculate a cost or a financial issue, or you calculate something which has to do with waiting times in operations, and then you use that information about waiting times to build another argument. So the exhibits and the quantitative elements also are part of the last stage, where you really go into deep calculation. Deep calculation doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend 8 hours in the computer lab. That is silly. But a couple of hours on an Excel to go through this and see whether these numbers actually confirm what you want to say, that is helpful. And even when you are in a typical management situations, knowing how solid your arguments are, because they are supported by quantitative evidence, makes you more comfortable. It makes your line of arguments more solid. And you can also see, usually with some quantitative evidence, that some of the things that you assumed up front actually are not true, or are especially true. Okay? So they function as reality tests as well as argumentative supports.
Now, to counter that a little bit, I think it's important that don't go overboard with calculations. Don't go overboard with looking for supplementary evidence outside. 12-hour case preparations, endlessly massaging numbers. Well, some cases might not even have numbers, or they might not be important. There's also, it is what Dave Garvin, professor at Harvard's Business School, is called an education for judgment, which means that you should always use your experience, your common sense, your life experiences when you look at a case solution as well. For instance, when you get a set of numbers, take a look at them. Where do they come from? How reliable are they? And take that into your judgment as well.
Definitely, although you have to quote a typical Harvard person here, you as a Harvard person as well. But of course, common sense comes in, and the judgment of the group comes in, because casework tends to be group work. You discuss your individual results with the rest of the group. And common sense usually filters out nonsensical number crunching. If you get stuck in 6 hours of Excel exercises, something is definitely wrong. What my point here is that some supportive argument, which you can find in the number patterns, can be helpful. If you're overdoing it, of course, what is sense here, what is common sense here, is decided not only by you, but also in your case discussion here. And I'm happy that Harvard has a monopoly on common sense here, but still.
I'm not sure about that one. Then there's the discussion of, should you look outside the case for information? Should you go on the internet and search and find things? And opinions there are a little bit divided. It depends on the type of case. If you're looking at a case that is historical and contains, for instance, a question of should the company adopt this technology or that technology, or should the company do this in response to something, or so on. Going out on the internet or looking in supplementary literature outside of what you've gotten to read for the case is generally not that helpful. It is a distraction, and be careful that you don't fall into this trap of analysis paralysis, forever seeking more information. Cases are about uncertainty. You don't know, but getting more information would help. And then there's ambiguity, which is more information just would make you even more confused. And the hallmark of a great manager is to be able to function in a situation with ambiguity.
But again, like Espen says, some cases are a bit different. The quantitative cases might require positioning of the company within an industry or within an economy. So when you have some trend analysis that shows that this company is really doing something special with its competitive strategy, which is supported by the numbers, that's what you look for, and after that you go back into the case. You don't, of course, get into a pool of further number crunching. But going out there on the internet for very specific purposes, which you decide up front, not just because, I have access, so let's go surfing. No. Before you do that, you have to decide what you want to know and where you want to confirm it. And then you do it, you get it, and then you go back to the case. So this is not something like, we have access, the web is there, and the web is wild, so let's go wild as well. No.
Now that we have the individual preparation down pat and you are fully immersed in the case, you feel like you've known the protagonist for years, you feel like you worked in that company, now it's time to start thinking about group work, if you're going to do it individually or as a group. And for group work, we have to segue to our third video.